jam boss is a pest. Coffee's cold, phone's on red alert. Can't catch a break, feeling like I'm gonna burst. Outburst, outburst, gotta get it out. This pent-up anger, gotta let it shout. Frustration building, can't hold it in. Gonna scream and shout, let the feeling begin. News is bad, politics are worse. People are rude, world's a curse. Social media's a toxic wasteland. Just wanna scream, is this all we're ordained? Outburst, outburst, gotta get it out. This pent-up anger, gotta let it shout. Frustration building, can't hold it in. Gonna scream and shout, let the feeling begin. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the one who's always venting, never having fun. But sometimes you gotta let it out. Shake it off, scream and shout. Outburst, outburst, gotta get it out. This pent-up anger, gotta let it shout. Frustration building, can't hold it in. Gonna scream and shout, let the feeling begin.
Click here.
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 Click here to subscribe.
The content provided on this podcast is intended for entertainment purposes only. Views and opinions expressed by the guests and/or the hosts of Broccoli TV are solely theirs. While we do not condone misinformation and disinformation, all details provided are taken from sources available to us at the time this episode is created. Broccoli TV makes no claim to accuracy, completeness, timeliness, suitability, or validity of any information and will not be liable for any errors, damages, persecutions, or bad hurt arising from consumption. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi, good evening. This is Broccoli, and this is the Broccoli TV podcast. Good evening here in the Philippines, and good afternoon in Europe. Good morning in Canada. Another special episode. It's called Understanding Family Law, and we have a special guest. So we will not be allowing anyone else to join, but it'll be an interesting topic. You know, it's better if we know more stuff after our lives, after cult. So let me just call out our co-hosts here. Clancy, good morning.
Good morning, everyone, or good evening in the East. And yeah, I'm curious. Uh, I've got a lot of questions. Let's put it that way.
Hmm.
So yeah, good
All
morning
right.
and good evening to everyone.
Thank you, Clancy. Sis Kale, how are you? Oh, I think she's traveling right now. Sis Ansat, how are you?
All good. Hi. Good evening to all listeners in the Philippines, and good morning to all listeners from this side of the world. So, this is going to be an exciting podcast, Brox, no? As we will
Yep.
be discussing a vital subject. We will be talking about family law, marriage and common law, divorce, separation, child custody, etc. Um, Although our guest is for tonight is not from the Philippines, but some point might be relevant to some laws in our home country.
Yep.
So I guess that's it.
All right.
Back to you.
Thank you. Uh, Childlike Chicken, good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
All right. So I just have some info here before we start. So I just researched. Consigliere is an Italian word meaning advisor from the Latin root consilium, which means advice. So here's what I got. Just a brief intro. He had a couple of academic degrees and he lives in Canada. He specializes in family law, interested in the Bible. But I heard he knows some Greek and Latin too. He likes talking about history, American or Canadian politics, and a bit of psychology. I don't know if Miss Childlike Chicken can add more. Do you want to add more? Or
Well, it's just gonna be a short one. You'll notice that our guest is staying anonymous today. Why? Well, let's just say when you work in law, especially family law, you've got to be a bit of a mystery sometimes. Plus, he's juggling, like what you said. Currently, he's studying international tax at a very prestigious university in the world. And also, like you said, he studied ancient Latin and Greek,
oh wow.
and he also studied the Bible. So maybe in future podcasts we can invite him again. In a cave here, he can ask questions maybe later if we have plenty of time. So I guess he's keeping a low profile just to be part of the vibe. And just think of him as our very own legal Batman, not DK, but with more paperwork. So let's all give a big welcome to the brilliant and probably very sleepy Consigliere.
Good morning.
Thank you both for that very warm and lovely introduction. Um, yes, I am a lawyer here in Canada. Broccoli, you defined that name, the Italian name, very, very well. So, for anyone who was wondering what that name means, Broccoli captured it very well.
All right. Let's start with the questioning or interview. Uh, Want to go first? Maybe. Okay, I'll go first. So let's briefly define what family law covers. What I know is it's marriage, divorce, um, custody, support, etc. So just a brief definition. Go.
Yeah, that's a very good definition. You can define it basically as anything to do with family relationships and associated economic and sometimes family violence. So it would be exactly what you said. It would be marriage, divorce. It would be things like custody, support, and even things like adoption and property division. So anything really to do with family relationships or their associated economic aspects.
All right. So just a disclaimer. Uh, this covers family law in Canada, but not in a specific, because I believe there's different laws governing provinces, different provinces, right?
Yes, you have that right. There is in Canada, there's a federal government, and every province has their own governments as well. There's a federal law called the Divorce Act, which governs divorce in Canada. And every province also has a Family Law Act or similar, which deals with provincial property division and common law relationships as well.
All right. Ansat, you have questions?
No, actually, we can go to segment two. I have lots of questions regarding this now, because we know that, as mentioned by our guests for tonight, that there are different laws per provinces here in Canada. So let's start with what are the legal requirements for marriage in Canada? Is it like all similar per province, or different province has its own requirements?
It is similar. The definition of marriage is federal, but the solemnization of marriage is provincial. So, what that means is every jurisdiction can have requirements to get married. Typically in Canada, unlike some places in the world, poly bigamy, sorry, is not allowed. So the first requirement is that you are not already married in order to be
Okay.
married. The second requirement is that there is a legal, an age requirement, which would be 16. Between the
Oh.
ages of 16 and 19, you need parental permission
Mm-hmm.
because you're still a minor. The other requirements are you have to freely give consent. No one can be forced into a marriage in Canada. Um, and then there are some requirements with getting a license in Canada, which are specific here.
Okay, so there's also something that we call common law relationship that Philippines law doesn't have. So what is common law relationship,
Common
basically?
law, yeah, that's a very good question. Common law here is when you're not married, but you cohabitate like you are. So it would be a marriage-like relationship. You live together, you cohabitate together for a period. In where I am in Canada, it's 12 months. So if you have been together, living continuously in a marriage-like relationship, even if you're not married, the law will consider you common law. And so there are accompanying rights and obligations and responsibilities that would go with that.
Okay, so how will they know, that it's already 12 months that you're in relationship together? Do you have to sign any paperwork, or do you have to provide proofs that you're together for 12 months?
That's a very good question. On your tax returns in Canada, there's always a box where you tick off your relationship status. So that is
Okay.
one way that the government can keep track if you are single or divorced or married or common law. The other way that people keep track is it's really up to them. You can determine, we started living together on say October 10th, and that's in 12 months from that date, that would be when you're considered common law.
Okay, so you have to be living together, right? Is that what it is? Or you can be like, in long distance relationship, and you just, let's say, declare that we are in common law relationship, but we are actually living, not together. Like, for example, one is in the Philippines, one in Canada, but let's say they share same bank accounts, and I declare this person as a common law, but we're not living together. Will they consider that?
No, there really has to be certain criteria that are met. So if
Okay.
you can have periods where you're apart, that's fine. But
Mm-hmm.
if you have never lived together, if one person is living in the Philippines and one person is living in Canada, and you've never lived together, that generally does not meet the requirement. No, there needs to be a cohabitating in a way that married couples would. So, what the law would look at is, do you sleep together? Do you cook together? Do you do activities together? Do you present yourselves to your family and the world as together?
Okay. So you cannot cheat. Like pretend somebody's like, oh, you know what? I'm sponsoring this person because we're in common law partner. So you guys have to be present or like in a period of time living together. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Do common law couples have the same rights as married couples?
Generally, yes. The difference, like I mentioned previously, is married couples, when they separate or get divorced, are under a federal act called the Divorce Act. If you are not married, if you are common law and you separate, you're under the provincial, like the Family Law Act, which is very similar but not always identical. So there can be differences in how property is divided depending on the province that you're in.
Okay, you mentioned about Family Law Act. What does that state?
The
Basically, like
family,
in short explanation.
yeah, the Family Law Act, every province will have their own. It
Okay.
covers things like property division. It covers, if again, it would cover common law relationships. So anything that isn't defined by the Federal Divorce Act, so anyone who's not married, it would apply to them. And it would apply to things like parenting time. It would apply to family violence. It would apply to sometimes drug and alcohol testing if that's an issue. A whole host of associated family law relationships would be covered by the Family Law Act or the equivalent act in each province.
Okay. There's a question here from one of our listeners, YouTube. So, Juram Ultra actually asked if you have a child or children, no, before habitation of other people, do you have the right to be his parent or guardian?
That is a very good question, and it depends. There is a status where you can step into the place of a parent. If you act like a parent to that child, if you are taking care of them, if you're financially supporting them, and acting in other ways like a parent, the law can consider you, they call it being in the place of a parent. And so you would have parental obligations and sometimes rights as well for that child.
Okay. Brooks, do you have any follow-up question?
Prenuptial agreements, is it common in Canada?
In my experience, it has not been overly common. It's getting more so than it used to be. Where I see prenuptial agreements most commonly now is when there is a significant financial difference between the parties. Say one is coming into the relationship with much more money,
Mm.
assets, property, that kind of thing than the other. Uh, Sometimes prenuptial agreements are a consideration and something they would like to do.
Mm. Okay, anyone
Okay.
else I would like to ask? Dana, Childlike, Scale, Clancy?
I'm curious about the statistics of marriage. Uh, I've heard that in the US, it's more than 50% um, fail rate in terms of the marriage or divorce, because in the Philippines, we don't have divorce. So I'm curious what's the statistics regarding the divorce rate in Canada? Do you have an
The
idea?
Yes, the divorce rate in Canada is very similar to the U.S. rate. So your 50% is very close. It's often a number that is bandied about as being the kind of indicator that about half of all relationships, half of all marriages will fail.
Fail.
Yes.
Please. It's even dangerous than skydiving.
So since that we are discussing about divorce, what are usually are the grounds for divorce in Canada?
There are three different grounds, two of which are almost never used. There is adultery or infidelity is one. Cruelty is another ground for divorce, but those in practice are almost never used because you would have to have a trial proving those first of all, and it adds a lot of time and expense to do that. It wouldn't be any faster to do it that way. And Canada, unlike some jurisdictions in the US and other countries, is a no fault jurisdiction. So even if there is infidelity, even if there is cruelty, that really doesn't affect things like child custody or property division or anything else. So in practice, the ground for divorce that is almost always used in Canada is living separate and apart for 12 months. So, what that means is you have to live in a way that you're not together anymore. You can still live in the same house. You don't have to necessarily move out. Sometimes people misunderstand that. You can be separated for the purposes of a divorce and still live in the same house together. But what that means is you can't uh, be living together like you were when you were married. So you can't be presenting yourselves to the world together. You can't be sleeping together. You can't be cooking together and going out and doing things together. As long as you meet that ground for 12 months, then you can get a divorce.
Okay. Because I've been doing a little bit of research, not because I would like to get a divorce, but I'm getting familiar. Just to let you know. So what I've read is like there's like fault-based grounds and no fault grounds. Is that correct? So what you're saying, the adultery and cruelty is the fault-based grounds.
Yes, that is true. But in Canada, even if you prove those, uh, all that means is you can go ahead with a divorce. You don't have to wait for the 12 months, but you would have to have a trial to prove adultery. You'd have to have evidence. You'd have to show, with photographs, with testimony, you'd have to prove the adultery or the cruelty to a court. So
Mm-hmm.
what happens with almost everyone is rather than go through that, which would actually take probably 12 months or more anyway, almost
Mm-hmm.
everyone just waits the 12 months. You decide, we're going to separate on whatever day, and then you just wait out those 12 months before a court will grant you the divorce.
Okay. And as you know, Philippines actually is trying to have divorce law as well. Is that right, Brox? But I think it's still under hearing, so it will
Yeah,
take a while.
the only two countries in the world that have no divorce law is Vatican City and the Philippines, because we're
Philippines.
so religious. So I don't know. I have a question for our guest. 1 second. So in the past 24 hours, have you heard this story? The current CEO of
Oh,
Astronomer, Andy Byron, he was caught on camera during a Coldplay concert. Have you heard about this, attorney?
I did hear about that. Yes, I don't know the details well, but I did see the headline and I am aware of that. Yes.
Yeah, it's so funny. They were caught like off guard. Um, and So this is like enough evidence already to file a divorce. It's, it's
Um,
a video.
it could go to it. Without more, though, there's no smoking gun here in the video that I see. You would have to have testimony from the other spouse. You would have to have witnesses who might have seen any behavior to prove the adultery. Because the video here, I mean, it does show something, but there's no specific act of adultery that I've seen.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
they're like hugging. It should be enough grounds, right? For if I'm the wife,
Well,
automatically
what,
I'll,
what the court often wants to see, and this is actually why they don't often do it, is they'd
Mm.
actually want to see like evidence of sex or other things
Oh.
happening, and you'd have to prove that in court, which can be a little dicey, and not everyone is comfortable bringing in evidence like that kind of thing. So even if there is an affair, even if there is something like what we see on the video that Broccoli
mm,
showed. Even still in Canada, what most people will end up doing, by far the majority, is they'll still wait out the 12 months and then get a divorce.
I have a
mm.
follow-up question, Broxton. Can Andy Byron sue Coldplay management, or during that, the person who's handling that concert for showing that video? Or I don't know if they sign any consent that they can, post the video or faces of people just like that. Can he sue them for just
Um,
showing that intimate video? Or I'm gonna say intimate because they're they seem sweet and hugging.
That's also a very good question, and it will depend on the law of the jurisdiction where they were in. So I believe this happened in the US, so it
Yeah.
would be according to whatever the law is there. Typically, though, you don't have a expectation of privacy in the US when you are out in public. So if you're at a Coldplay concert, the likelihood of you being on camera, being caught, with someone, the court will generally think that that is something you should expect, that you don't have a right of privacy when you're out at a
Yeah,
concert.
I agree. They cannot sue Chris Martin, the singer of the vocalist of Coldplay, at all. They didn't know. Anyway, okay, we have a couple of questions here. Let's just read this out. Hello. Uh, if my wife got married in Canada to a Canadian citizen, is that valid in Canada, given that my wife is married to me in the Philippines?
Okay, so if I'm understanding that correctly, there is a marriage in the Philippines, and someone got married in Canada as well. Is that the
His
question?
wife. So they're married in the Philippines. His wife went to Canada and got married to a Canadian citizen.
No. Generally, like I said, the requirement in Canada to get married is that you are not married. So
Oh, okay.
if someone was validly married in the Philippines and then goes to Canada without getting a divorce, I know you can't get a divorce in the Philippines. So if they are still married to the person in the Philippines and they go to Canada and they get married to another person, that is against the law in Canada. That is not permitted.
All right. Got it. Um, I don't
I
know
have
if
follow
this
up
is
for that.
sure, sure.
Actually, Brock, sorry, Brox, no,
Go.
because some Filipinos actually have that same case. So what they actually do is, they file divorce here. So what does it mean? So the Filipino, let's say Filipino, by nature, let's say they're married in the Philippines, then one spouse came to Canada, met someone, that person filed divorce here, divorcing that person in the Philippines. It's valid in Canada, right?
If they come to Canada and get a divorce in Canada, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes, as long as they meet the requirement, there's a residency to get a divorce in Canada. You have to live in the province that you're seeking a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
For generally the law is 12 months. So if they meet that requirement, they can seek a divorce from the court. And once they have a divorce, they're free to remarry if they choose.
So this divorce actually is just one-sided because the other person is in the Philippines. There's no way for that person to, like hire a lawyer or to run after the other person because the other person is in Canada. So since they're separated for like 12 months, the other person who's in Canada filed the divorce and it's been honored in Canada because it's separate. They are both separated, right? So it's counted, and then that the other person in Canada can now legally get married again to anyone in Canada.
Yes, your understanding is
Okay.
correct. The person in the Philippines, in this example, does not have to consent to the divorce.
Okay.
All that's needed is the person in Canada to consent to a divorce and ask the court for a divorce. And as long as the court has jurisdiction, as long as that person has lived in that province for the required amount of time, they can go ahead and get a divorce, ask for a divorce, even if the person in the Philippines doesn't want a divorce.
Okay, thank you. Brox?
Hmm. Okay. I guess this is the same question for traveler. Yeah. So bride and groom were Filipinos when they were in the Philippines. They got married, and then the woman, I suppose, filed a divorce in Canada. Naturalized Canadian. It's the same thing, right? Is it? Oh,
Yeah, it
Yes.
looks to be.
it's
And one other thing I would just add to what I've said
mm,
is the court will grant a divorce. However, before they do, if there are any children involved, if there are any property disputes or issues that need to be divided, the court will want to do that before they grant a divorce. So if there are, say, in the example with the one person in the Philippines and one person in Canada, if there are children involved, the court will want to be satisfied before granting a divorce that they are properly taken care of, that they are supported, that there is child support in place, being paid by the payor parent to the one who has the kids.
yeah, that's nice.
Okay.
I like it better there in Canada. uh, all right. Sis Kale, you raise your hand. Sis Kale.
Maybe
Oh,
she's
she's
not
at the gym.
available.
Yeah, she's working out.
Yeah.
So for property division, what is it like 50-50 or 25%?
It really depends. Sometimes there's no property division at all, if that would be unfair. It really depends on the specific circumstances of the parties involved, of the husband and wife. It will often be 50-50 during the relationship. So, what that means is anything you had individually on your own before you were married, you get to keep. It's only the money, the assets, the house, the car that you acquired together when you were married. That is very often split 50-50. Although if that would be unfair, again, the court will look at this very carefully. And if one side says, no, that's unfair because, I have this reason, like I paid for everything. I
Yeah.
paid for the entire car, for example. I'm just using the car as an example. No one else paid for it. No one else used it. No one else was around it. I maintained it. I paid for the entire thing from my inheritance, let's say, which is generally exempt from being divided, that would be an example of something that might be unfair to divide. But you're correct that generally speaking, the court will look to divide the assets, and people sometimes forget the debt. The debt as well is divided during the relationship. So if one party racks up, $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 worth of debt, the other party, the spouse, is sometimes liable for half of that debt during the relationship as well.
Right. Now, there's no fault divorce. Like, he cheated, so I should get more of the property. Like, is that a thing in Canada?
That is not a thing in Canada. That's why proving divorce, like proving adultery or proving cruelty, is very often, in fact, almost never not done because it doesn't affect anything. It doesn't affect the property division. There are some jurisdictions that I'm aware of, like Texas in the U.S., where there is fault. So if you are at fault, sometimes that can affect how much money you get or how much you have to pay. Or, it can even affect things like custody of the children sometimes. But in Canada, that does not happen. Even if, and I know this is sometimes surprising to a lot of people, even if your former spouse cheated on you, even if they committed adultery and it's terrible and you feel terrible about it, the law really doesn't care about that. Property is still divided in the same way. Any kind of parenting arrangements are still done in the same way in Canada.
All right.
Brox, how about that child custody and spousal support? This is very interesting one. Child custody. How how it is handled?
Um, each case is looked at on its own merits. The guiding light for the court is always the best interest of the child. So, what the court will try to do is award parent. They call it parenting time now. That's a little bit of an updated term from custody.
Okay.
But what they do is they try to do what's best for the child. So if it's in the best interest of that child to be with one of the parents, say 80% of the time, and the other one 20, that's what the court will do. Very often, there's no presumption. So what that means is the court will look at everything with a kind of fresh set of eyes, and they'll look at everything from the beginning. Very commonly, though, the court will think it's in the best interest of the child to have contact with both, so to be around both, to have time with both parents. But if there is abuse, if there is neglect, if there is a reason for one parent or the other not to have the kids, then the court will order that too. And the other thing I might say is the older the children are, because this often comes up. Like my kid is 17 years old and he doesn't want to go with dad anymore. He doesn't like dad, he doesn't want to be around dad. Do I have to force him to go? And the answer is the older the child is, the less likely the court is going to force a child to go somewhere that they don't want to go. So if they
Mm.
are, say, 16 or 17, the likelihood of a court forcing a child to go with a parent that he doesn't want to go with is very low. If, on the other hand, that child is, say, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, the likelihood is that the court will think it's in that child's best interest to have a relationship with both parents and have the opportunity to see both parents, to know both parents, and have a relationship with both. So the court will be more likely to order the child to go with the other parent in that case.
Okay, my follow-up question is, since let's say that child is like around 17 or 18 years old and refuses to go to the other parent, can that parent refuse to provide or support that child since the child doesn't want to go with him or her? Can he
Uh,
refuse to provide any support?
that is a good question, and the answer is almost always no. There has been a lot of case law in Canada on this very subject. Uh, Child support is almost always independent from parenting time. So even if the child who's 17 doesn't want to go see dad because they don't have a good relationship and they don't want to be there, the parent still has to pay child support until the court orders otherwise. And the court will always order child support in those cases, at least until the child is the age of majority in Canada, which here is either 18 or 19. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that support can last through continued education. So if the child is going to university,
Mm-hmm.
the parents still have to pay child support, even when they're 19, 20, 21, 22, sometimes well into their 20s, if the court thinks that would be in the best interest of the child. And that's what and the other paying parent has the um, financial ability to do so.
Okay. Later on, I'm gonna ask about what will happen to the other parent who's refusing to provide support. But I would like to ask first about the spousal support because there are lots of misconception about this. No, some they're saying that usually women are the winners here because men have to provide support to the women when they got separated or divorced. Is that right?
It can be right. Unlike child support, there's a difference. So people will ask about this. The right of a child to have support from both parents is almost always going to be upheld by the court. So uh, there's almost no instances where a parent will not have to pay child support, but spousal support is discretionary. So what that means is the person asking for spousal support, often the wife, but not always, but often it is the wife, has to prove an entitlement first to spousal support. So in relationships that were very brief, say a marriage only lasted a year or less than a year, and there's no property really that needs to be divided, and they're both young and they're both working and they're not one isn't disabled or uh, needing to be taken care of. In that case, spousal support is less likely. But if, on the other hand, the husband and wife were married for a long time, the wife stayed at home with the kids, looked after the kids when they were growing up. She did the cooking, the cleaning, taking care of the kids, driving them to their appointments. Uh, in that case, the entitlement to spousal support would be much greater. So the court will look at that first to determine if one spouse is entitled to support, and then they'll look and see how much. So if once there's an entitlement, if any, then they'll see, okay, how much, how long should there be spousal support for? Should it be for 1 year or 5 years or 10 years? Or should it be indefinite, which means there is no end date? The court will look at all of those things and come up with what the court thinks is fair in that specific situation.
Okay, so what will happen to the spouse? I'm gonna say spouse, so it seems like it's gonna be, husband and wife. They have they're even in law, right? They're both like nobody's have the bigger, let's say, advantage. Even if you're female or male, you have the same level in law. Um, what will happen to the other spouse who's like refusing to provide support? How the court handled it? Is he going or is she going to jail?
Um,
How does it work?
this is something that comes up often, and what happens first is you need to go to court and get an order for, say, spousal support. So you make your application, and the court will say yes or no. If the court says yes, there is support being ordered for the spouse, and the other spouse says, no, I'm not going to pay. I don't want to. I feel it's unfair. I don't have any money, or if I do have money, I'd rather not spend it on you because I'm mad at you, that kind of thing. Um, they really don't have an option. If they really think it's unfair, they can ask the court again and say it's unfair. And there are these new facts, there are these new things that make it unfair, and the court may look at that and determine whether it is or not. But as long as there's an order for support, even if the spouse doesn't want to pay, they must. And if they don't, it can be enforced. Every province in Canada has a maintenance enforcement program where if the paying spouse doesn't pay, the government can come in and take it from their bank account, whether they want
Mm-hmm.
it or not. The court has broad powers. They can even do things like suspend driver's licenses, passports. They can even order jail in very extreme cases, although I'm not aware of any recently where that has happened, but it's possible. Uh, the court has a very broad powers to compel a spouse who should be paying to pay the spousal support that they should.
So you cannot say that, hey, you know what? I don't want to work because I don't want to give support. So some people are doing that excuse. I have a coworker who have that same problem, spouse refusing to to work. So no income from his side, and he's refusing to go to support. So what she did actually is sue again, and then think they're working on bringing this guy to jail. So
Yeah, and the other thing, just speaking generally, and not about that case that you know, but just generally, the court can impute income. So what that means is if someone refuses to work, like you say, I'm not working, ha ha ha, I'm don't have any money, so you can't make me pay. What the court can do is say you're capable with your education level, with your experience in previous work, with your abilities to do any number of things, you're capable of earning, say, $100,000 a year. That's what we think you're capable of earning. So that is what we are going to set support by. So what that means is even if you don't earn any money at all, the court will say you have to pay support based on this amount. And if you don't, all of those enforcement mechanisms that I said can come into play. So they can take your property, they can take your car, they can seize your bank accounts and pay it if you don't pay it willingly. They can even, like I said, they can restrict your driver's license or passport or other things as well.
okay, Brox, I know we have some few questions there. I actually
Yeah.
screenshot it from, but I just one last question, follow-up question. Let's say you mentioned about the government, right? And you know that CRA actually is very good in this one. What if one spouse actually passed away and this person have an existing owing to government? What will happen to that owing? Will that be taken from the living spouse, or what's gonna happen?
Just so I understand your question a little more clearly, you're saying if the spouse who is supposed to pay passes
Yes,
away,
yes.
then there are rules like you correctly mentioned about the CRA uh, that would govern that. So there's a priority that would be paid out of the estate. What that means is the person with the highest priority will get whatever money is left in the estate, and then it will go down from there. So any child support or spousal support owing will be taken into account if there is money for it. If the person dies, however, and there's no more money, then unfortunately, if they're dead and there's no more money and they're obviously not making any more, then there is no more child support or spousal support.
No, actually, what I'm trying to say is owing, like you owe something from the government, and that person died. So can the government run after to the spouse?
Oh,
Like they
are
can
you
they
meaning when they're still married or when they're divorced?
they're married and then the other spouse actually passed away. So the one who have owing actually is the one who died. And then the living spouse, the other half actually have money, let's say money of her own. And they have the other person, the husband actually passed away, and he have lots of owing from the government, let's say from through tax or anything, now can the government run after to the wife?
It
Can
will
they
depend. I do understand. I think the nature of your question. It will depend on the nature of the debt. Typically, people are responsible for their own debts, except, like I said, during property division, during a divorce sometimes. So it isn't automatically true. Sometimes people will think, you know, my husband had this debt and he racked up a debt to the government and that now he passed away and do I have to pay it? And the answer is very often not. But it will depend whether you know, whether you both signed an agreement, or whether you're both liable. It depends on the nature of the debt, but I can say very often not. It is not necessarily true that a spouse owes all of the obligations for the debt of a former spouse who died.
okay? Yes, Rox. Sorry.
Oh yeah. Let's give way to our co-hosts here. Clancy, Siskil. Wanna ask anything? No. Babycorn, Enoch, Dana. Okay, no one wants to ask. So we have some questions here. 1 second. So is spanking of children as form of discipline really effective? Because in the Bible, it says, "Spare the rod and spoil the child." Proverbs 13:24. Are you in favor of this, and is it allowed in Canada?
This has been the subject of a lot of debate in Canada, actually. It used to be that spanking was permitted with almost no exceptions, that you were free to spank and hit and otherwise discipline your child as you saw fit. The courts in Canada have more recently determined that there are limits to spanking children, that it is permissible, but only by certain um, people in a child's life, almost always a parent, although sometimes a teacher, and only until a certain age. So the age here in Canada for spanking is usually between 2 and 12. The courts tend to take a dim view of younger than that or older than that. They see that increasingly as a form of child abuse or violence, particularly if there are things other than a hand being used for spanking. So if you are whipping your child with a belt, for instance, the court is very likely to think that that is uh, not reasonable, that is beyond disciplining and may be veering into abuse. Things like, sticks or, metal rods, things like that people used to use for spanking is increasingly in Canada being seen as not appropriate. Um, so that's
Mm.
kind of the current state of the law. It's still allowed, but there are increasing restrictions on it in Canada.
All right. Because it can be humiliating for children as well. So it depends if it was done in private or in public. Right?
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's why the courts tend to have focused on those years between 2 and 12. I think for largely, I think for the older kids, for the reason that you mentioned, it becomes less effective, and I think it can be humiliating for a 15-year-old to be spanked,
Mm.
by his parent. That may not be an effective or as effective form of discipline, and it can just lead to other problems. I mean, if you're spanking a 15-year-old, is that discipline? Are you hitting him out of anger? Is it abuse?
Mm.
Are you beating your child at that point? So all of these things are being looked at, and I think the majority opinion is that the older the child is, from 12, it just becomes less acceptable as a form of discipline.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Sis Kale.
Since we're talking about the children in a relationship breakdown, and I'm gonna relate this to MCGI. If I want to divorce or separate with my common law spouse, and we have children together, um, will I have a ground, or will I have a case or advantage if I use um, the angle that I want to get the custody of my kids, and I want to use that my spouse is an NCGI member, and every time they come to their gatherings, the kids will have to stay to come with them and stay late. And sometimes or oftentimes they'll be just laid down on a on a floor with some floor mats and sleep on the floor. Would I have can I use that as a ground to separate my children from my to bring them to my custody, because I consider that as a child neglect. Well, what can you say about that?
You could be. I think that those are important points that you raise. It will depend. If you bring an application to the court, you can say that the children, it's not in their best interest to attend because it's very late. They're not able to properly go to school when they're focused on this so much, or it's so late at night. You could make an application to the court and say it's not in their best interest, because the court will always be guided when it comes to children by what's in their best interest. So, is it in the best interest of a child to, say, attend an MCGI gathering at all hours of the night? So they can't go to school the next morning, or they're very tired, or they can't focus. The court would look at that and determine, well, is it in their best interest? So that is something that you could absolutely raise if you're concerned, and the court would absolutely look at that and think, well, what's going on here? Is this just being the children being exposed to the religion of the other parent, which is generally allowed, or is this not in their best interest and interrupting and interfering with their studies, with their friends, with their other relationships or other activities, and the court can make an order accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else like to ask? Dana? Is that like? Oh, go ahead.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Oh, sure.
Did you
Dana first.
ask what the audience? Did you ask the question from the audience already?
Which one is it?
Like from Kurosaki, is there like Sharia law in Canada? Is it recognized by the government in any form or capacity?
Um, Officially by the government, no. However, parties are free if they want to enter into separation agreements or agreements regarding their division of assets. If they want to operate according to Sharia law in that context, it has generally been allowed.
What about, for example, if a Muslim man marries a Christian woman and the Christian woman didn't know that he had other wives, and she filed for divorce or whatever, is the government will the government take Sharia law into consideration?
If that in your example, if the woman does not want it, then no. The woman in your example will always have recourse to the courts, and the courts will not apply Sharia law in that context for a divorce or for property division or for parenting time of the children or any other thing if that is not the intention of the parties. If the just in your example, just to comment on that a little bit more, if the Muslim man, was married already, that can go to the validity of the marriage itself. And the woman may be able to argue, if she's so inclined, that there was never a valid marriage. Uh, the relationship happened, but the marriage itself was invalid because remember what I said at the beginning of the hour here that in order to enter a marriage in Canada, you must be unmarried. So if he was previously married, she would have that argument to make that the marriage itself was illegitimate, that he was married already, that there was polygamy going on, and there is no valid marriage.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, go ahead, Miss Chicken.
Hi, I have a question. I have two questions. First, let's say there's a family where both parents are part of a cult-like organization. One day the husband realizes it's a cult and wants out, but the wife still believes in it. Can the husband legally stop the wife from bringing their kids to the group's gatherings?
That's another good question, and one that often comes up. It's very similar to the question I think that I answered previously, in that you could bring an application and the court would look at it. It would go to see whether it's in their best interests to force the children to attend. If that is part of their normal pattern, if that's what they were doing before, and they're just continuing their activity, the court is more likely to allow that to continue because that's already part of their established routine. However, if that is something new, something unwanted, like I said, if it's interfering with other aspects of the children's life, that may be something that the court would have concerns about and could issue orders about if it felt it was necessary.
Okay. How about this one? What legal rights do children have if they do not wish to participate in their parents' religion, particularly if the group is considered a destructive or high control cult?
Well, that will go to the best interest of the children again. If it's highly destructive, if it's being abusive to the children in some way, the courts will absolutely look at that and just see what is going on if it is in their best interest. If it's just a difference of religion, though, between the parents, say one parent wants to continue on in the say the cult-like activity or religion, and the other parent does not, and the children either want to or don't want to in your example, It really depends on the age of the children at that point too. If they're very young, the court is less likely to give a lot of weight to their wishes. If they're like 4 and 5, and I don't really want to go, and they can't really say a reason why, just they're maybe would rather watch cartoons or they'd rather do something else. The court is less likely to intervene in that. But if they're older, say 13 or 14 or 15, and they really are not interested in religion, they don't want to do it anymore, in that case, a court is more likely, particularly if the other parent is supporting that child to not participate, the court may be more likely to intervene then.
Okay, another one. That's very interesting. What legal options does a husband have if the majority of the family's income is being directed to a cult by his spouse?
Um, in your question, are the parties still married or together, or are they separated?
They're still together.
If they're still together, the court is less likely to order anything. Usually, the court orders come into play when there is a separation, when the parties are, living separate and apart. Before then, if they're still together, it will be considered kind of an issue for the parties to work out in the relationship, how to spend money. Um, you could make an argument. I mean, again, after separation, that the assets are being wasted, or sometimes the courts call it dissipated. But if you're still together, that's a much harder argument to make, and the courts are much less likely to be receptive to it. Does that make sense?
Michigan.
Yes, yeah, it makes sense.
Okay.
That's all. Maybe I'll ask another question later.
All right. Please answer.
Yeah, just a follow-up question from the second question of childlike now. Let's say both parents are members of this cult-like organization, and let's say their age is about 10 to 17 years old, and they refuses to go to this cult-like organization. They don't want to participate anymore. Who can stand on behalf of these children in court? Let's say, can the teachers or other relatives or even neighbors can stand for these children?
That's a very good question too. If no one is willing, like none of the parents are willing to stand for the children, the court can appoint a lawyer, an advocate, who can argue for the child's views. That is possible, and I would say not that uncommon. That sometimes the court will appoint a lawyer to act for the children. The court would have to be satisfied, though, before they did that there is a real issue here, that the child has no advocate or voice other than their own, particularly if they're 10, say between 10 and 17. If they're very young and can't properly advocate for themselves, the court may go that route. Uh, if it's considered not to be in the child's best interest, or if there's abuse in some way, if the child would just generally rather not, but it's not necessarily terrible, the child just doesn't want to go. More often than not, unless there's more going on in that specific scenario, the court is likely to think that's just a parenting issue. That children sometimes have to do what their parents say, particularly when they're like 10 and 11, and when they're older, they can revisit it. Children, again, it really would depend on the facts, but more often than not, I'm just thinking about what you asked. If they're younger, the court is unlikely to probably do anything in that case. Does that answer your question, or do you have a follow-up?
Yes, actually. Let's say they are about the older children, let's say around 16, 17, 18. For those, let's say 3 years. Can the government take custody of these children if they feel like that, hey, you know what, my parents are, I'm not happy, I'm really tired every day, I have to go to these events that I don't want to go, and I don't feel safe. Let's say the children are making up that question. I don't want to say making up, but let's say they're saying these statements. So can the government take custody of these children until the after the hearing, or after until this problem is fixed?
It's possible, but I would say it's unlikely. What is more possible, or more likely, I suppose I should say, in your scenario, if they're 16 or 17, would they have a alternate place that they could stay? I think the courts would look at that. Could they stay with a grandparent or a friend, or someone who would be willing to take them, for a short amount of time? I think that would be a prudent first step before getting the machinery of the state involved, and kind of forcibly removing someone, particularly that old. Uh, I think when they're 16 or 17, the likelihood of them just being able to say, I'm not going because I don't want to go and you can't make me. Anyone who's had a 16 or 17-year-old can know it's very difficult to physically force a 17-year-old teenager to really go anywhere that they don't want to go. And if the parent was doing that, if they were physically forcing them, that might be an issue that the court would look at and determine it could even rise to the level of abuse. But very, very often, what would happen most of the time, I think, in my experience, if the kid just refuses to go, I'm not going. You can't make me. I'm not going. Uh, that would probably be the end of it in most cases, and the court probably would not intervene. Like I say, unless the situation was intolerable, at which point, again, if there's an alternate living situation until things can get stabilized, that might be something the court would look at too.
Okay, thank you. Brooks?
Yeah, thank you. This is great. We're going on the cult route because here we're mostly cult survivors. Um, I'm just wondering, were you yourself were in a cult or cult-like church growing up? I'm not sure.
Yes, that's a very good question, and I do have experience with that. I wouldn't characterize it probably quite so much as a true cult, but it
Mm.
certainly had cult-like elements to it, particularly when I look back and see they didn't call it indoctrination, but it was very similar, I think. They kind of shaped your thinking and told you what to do. And, if you didn't do what you were told to do or expected, there would be consequences. You'd be possibly shunned. That was common. Disapproval
Mm.
from the community was possible. So there are certainly some cult like elements that I am familiar with and have experienced myself.
And you left that church long time ago. What happened?
Yes, I became increasingly disillusioned, as I think many of your listeners might be able to relate to.
Yeah.
I started to question some of the things that we were being taught. Some of the doctrines didn't make sense to me. They couldn't be adequately explained by anyone that I would ask. And it just became to me increasingly clear that I wasn't getting anything out of it. That it wasn't something that I was believing in anymore. And so I did stop attending. I think to answer your question about when that was, I was probably in my later teens when I began that process. And then I was older actually when I completed it. So it took me a number of years, I would say, before I was fully. I might even use the term a full exiter or exiting. It probably took me a number of years to get to that point.
Nice, nice. Yeah, it's like it's normal that you outgrow it as you grow older, just like most of us here. Yeah, Miss Chicken, go ahead.
Probably this is not related to family law. Just a general question. Since we're talking about cults now, can the Canadian government investigate a religious organization to determine if it functions as a destructive cult and take legal action against it, particularly if there are reports of lives being harmed or involvement in activities such as money laundering?
The simple answer to that is yes. The government and the courts and prosecutors can definitely investigate. I would encourage anyone who has a specific complaint. If there is evidence, you can bring that to the police. If there is a criminal complaint, if there is anything against the law in Canada, the police can investigate, and charges could possibly be laid and pursued. So that is definitely an option. I would say, unless there's evidence, though, it can be difficult. Freedom of religion and the ability to worship in a way that you choose is protected in Canada generally. So just because you have a difference of opinion or you're angry at the way that certain things have been conducted doesn't necessarily rise to anything that the courts or the police would do anything about, but it could. So it would really go to your specific complaint. If there's money laundering, or if there's any other activity that should be investigated. If there's evidence of a crime, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, so let's read this question from Marlon Cruz. My pastor asked my brother Manolo, who is living in my basement in Edmonton, to leave me as I have already exited the cult. He called my brother shameless if he would not leave me. What case should I file and to whom should I submit it to? I'm suffering anxiety as I will financially be affected due to loss of support to pay my mortgage, and not to mention its psychological impact to my health. I'm losing sleep on this.
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, the brother is living in the basement, and the pastor asked him to leave. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, the cult leader asked the brother to leave Marlon, and he was called shameless if he would not leave him. Um, so it affected him financially and psychologically. Can he file a case?
If you believe you have a claim for damages, say you have suffered, what did he say? There's psychological impact, anxiety. Uh, you can bring a claim, a civil claim in Canada. This person, I believe, is in Edmonton, so you would
Yeah.
bring your claim in Alberta. Um, the bar is fairly high for this type of thing. I'd have to know a little bit more to answer this question more fully. I'd have to get some more facts and details. As it exists, I don't know that there is much of a claim. I think the cult leader or the pastor asking the brother to leave, calling him shameless if he would not leave. It, I don't see anything here that would rise to the level required for it to be truly actionable, to really get damages here. If you were interested in pursuing it, though, you would probably need medical evidence as to your anxiety. So anything from a psychologist or a therapist documenting exactly how it's affected you. Would be something the court would need to look at. So if you can't work, if it's affected your finances, if you're stressed all the time, if you can't sleep, these would be things that you would need evidence for, and you need to present that to the court.
Yep. Okay. God, I hate cults. Anyway, Sis Kale, go ahead.
I have a question. What does it take to trigger an investigation against a potentially destructive call? Like, like uh, because as I'm understanding it, Canada is um, uh, like giving so much liberties, uh, especially in religion. Like um, everybody can practice uh, whatever doctrine they come up, and uh, people sometimes gets harmed by these practices. But I mean, my question is, what does it take for an authority to step in and like just raise a flag, to start investigating and peek into it and look into it?
Well,
Yes, attorney. Yeah.
it would take a fair amount generally. It would depend how you want to pursue it. In Canada, there are two separate processes to pursue claims. One is the through the criminal court. If there's anything that violates the Criminal Code of Canada, that would be pursued that way. So you would call the police, they would do an investigation. If there was enough evidence, they would turn that over to the Crown prosecutor or the Crown attorney, who would then prosecute whoever was breaking the law. So if there was a cult or a religious organization who was breaking the law, they could be prosecuted criminally. There is a civil process. If someone has been impacted financially or has been wronged in some way and would like money, there's a civil claim that someone can pursue. And in Canada, I just want to emphasize a little bit that the processes are different. The
Right.
court system. So you'd have to determine first of all whether you want to pursue anything against them criminally or civilly. Um, the bar, you're right to note. In Canada, there's a certainly a freedom of religion to practice a religion how you see fit. So anything that would fall under that generally is not going to be successful if you bring a claim about anything like
So
that.
I don't know if you heard about this in the news, but there was a cult, or still is, somewhere in here in Saskatchewan. Um, if you read about Romana de Dulo, so she's like a political slash spiritual cult. Um, the government, and this amazes me because even though she already made public announcement and public threats, like online and press releases, that she's gonna harm the medical workers. and the people that they deem violating their, I don't know, their rights or their own laws, and she herself declares herself as the Queen of Canada. And this amazes me because until now she hasn't been prosecuted, no charge uh, filed against her, and she pretty much took over the whole town because her forces and the followers were gathering in a land that was donated or like land land by one of the members, and they're like pretty much taken over this small town. So I am just wondering what is Canada doing, to 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 protect the public from these cults because they are um, uh, hiding or yeah, like hiding in the guise of freedom of religion. So, have you heard of that case?
I'm
And do you
not
have any comments
familiar
about that?
specifically with the case in Saskatchewan, no, but it doesn't surprise me. What you've hit on is exactly the tension that exists in Canada. How to balance freedom of religion on one hand with potential harm and negative effects on members or even the wider community, like you said, if they've taken over this town. I'm not, like I say, I'm not familiar with this case. I can't speak to it generally,
Okay.
uh, but 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 in a broader kind of way, what Canada can do about it, one thing you can do is anything that breaks the law. If someone is uttering threats, that is a criminal violation in Canada. You can't threaten to harm people. You can't threaten to kill people. You can't, I don't know what has or hasn't gone on, but anything like that, if anything has gone on like that, you can absolutely can and should bring that to the attention of the police. That there are laws in Canada against threatening other people. There's also laws against defamation, if that is a concern. So there are some things already on the books. The other thing I would add is that Canada is looking at strengthening some online harms legislation that's looking to be passed again, hopefully soon, because a lot of things now, threats and coercion and manipulation, a lot of things are going online these days. So Canada is looking to give the police, give prosecutors a little bit more in their toolbox to work with as far as online behavior is concerned when it comes to cults or cult-like religious activity.
Well, it sounds like the responsibility or the safety is left to us, the the members. So it sounds like there's a little, very little that we can, like the authorities can do for us. So I think public awareness is all we can best do, because like this call that I was talking about, Romana Di Dulo, she is actually teaching her members that you should not pay your water and electricity bill. None of that should be paid, and that should be serviced by the government to the public. And the members believed her, and of course, what happened is people's utilities were cut off because when they stopped paying their bills, your utilities will be cut off. So that the community were in a way affected by the teachings of Romana. So I mean, but then she's still free. She's still roaming around. So, I mean, it sounds like it's only up to us to protect ourselves and be aware that if this leader's teachings is harming us, um, you know, we should have that discernment and should be the wake up call. But uh, for many, that was not the case.
Yes, and I think you've hit on that exactly. I think in Canada, people are generally given the freedom to act as long as it's within the law, to act how they choose. So that can be difficult, like you say. How do you protect members? And it can often be up to them. Yes. I would encourage, though, if there's anything that anyone is concerned about, any threats, any counseling, I would say to break the law. Like if anyone is being advised not to pay taxes, I've heard that there's a kind of a pseudo legal organization in Canada that sometimes advises people not to pay taxes, and they're not obligated to obey the laws of Canada. Anyone who is being advised to do something like that, first of all, I would suggest you not do that, that you must obey the law. And if there is anything going on where you're feeling manipulated, where you're feeling controlled by your religious leader, where you feel like you have no other choice but to comply, there may be you may be able to sue or to bring a civil claim on that basis and say you were so wrongfully coerced that you couldn't freely decide on your own. That will be a hard claim, I will say. The reason why I hesitate, that's a hard case to make in Canada. People are generally considered to be competent when they're adults, and the law will hold people accountable for their own actions. But in a case where someone feels like they had no other choice, where they were compelled, if they didn't do this, they were going to be kicked out of the group, they were going to be shunned, they were going to lose, their entire support system, all of their friends, everything they know. That may be a stronger case to make, if that makes sense. But you are right that there are limits in Canada to what can be done legally, unfortunately.
Okay. Miss Chicken, go ahead.
Um, this is related to um, Kale's question somehow. What legal or protective actions can a former cult member take if they are being bullied, harassed, or subjected to character assassination by current members of the group?
Well, yes. If anyone is being subject to harassment, that's a crime in Canada. Harassment is against the law. So if anyone is being harassed by someone in Canada, you can absolutely inform the police. Harassment is defined. I mean, if it's ongoing, if someone is continually harassing you, threatening you, you know, trying to harm you in some way, ruin your reputation. There are absolutely laws in Canada against those things. And you can either bring, like I say, if it rises to a criminal level, you can call the police, they can investigate, and if warranted, they will file charges, and you can proceed that way. You can also proceed civilly if there is a say defamation. Someone is attacking your character, and they're just ruining your reputation among the community that you belong to. There are remedies in a civil context as well. So you could bring a lawsuit for that, if that makes sense.
All right. Any other questions? Chicken? Very good. All right. Let's talk. All right. Let's talk about immigration in Canada. Most of us Filipinos, of course, would like to live there because politics here sucks, and you guys have better healthcare. Um, some couples go there just maybe just to get a divorce. I'm not sure if that's a thing. But if, for example, I'd like to go over there and live there, what is the most common issue or hindrance for Filipinos to immigrate to Canada? I mean, what is the fastest way to get approved?
Um, a couple of things. Just to quickly mention the divorce in Canada. You cannot come here if you don't have a connection to Canada and you don't live in Canada. You cannot get a divorce in Canada. It's different. There are some jurisdictions in the U.S. Where that's allowed, but generally in Canada, unless it's impossible for you to get a divorce at home, like where you're from, the courts in Canada generally will not allow you to get a divorce here. So that's just very quickly, I just wanted to make that point. As far as immigration goes, though, it used to be a very quick way, probably a way that many Filipinos are aware of when it comes to immigration. You could either apply as a temporary foreign worker. That was a way many people came to Canada to fill a need for a job that was not being filled by Canadians here. The other way that was very somewhat fast was the education. So if you came here as a student, you could come in, you could study here, and while you were studying, you could work part-time. And there was a path to, once you graduated, a path to being here permanently. Those paths are increasingly difficult these days. It has gotten much harder politically. Immigration in Canada has become a more controversial issue than it used to be. So it's harder, I would say, for Filipinos looking to immigrate here. The requirements are more than they used to be. The timelines can be longer, and the denials, sometimes the rejections for an application, are sadly growing. They're more than they used to as well.
I see. Um, there's a question. How is Canada coping with the tariff imposed by Donald Trump? Were you affected?
um, yeah, that's a very controversial issue here in Canada right now, as you can imagine. Um, Canada is very affected by everything the U.S. Says and does. So the tariffs are a big concern. There are tariffs on steel. There's I believe increased tariffs are being threatened on copper and other things like that. So anything that falls outside, there's a North American agreement here. It used to be called NAFTA. It's now called usually CUSMA here, the Canadian, US, Mexico agreement. Anything that isn't covered by that agreement is being, again, increasingly threatened by tariffs. There can be increased costs here. So that's a concern. And the political relationship. Canada and the US used to be very, very close, as probably most Filipinos are aware. They share a very long, undefended border. They cooperate on a number of issues: security, trade, almost any number of issues. But that is increasingly strained, I would say, because of the tariffs. I believe, I'm not sure, you could probably speak to this a little bit more. I think the Philippines was recently hit by a increased tariff by Trump as well. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. As far as I know.
So I don't know how Filipinos are responding to that. I would guess probably in a similar way to Canadians, in that it's not it's not really our choice. It's not what we would prefer, but sometimes you have to deal with the reality that exists.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you. Scale, go ahead.
Going back to immigration. Is there a route that a church or an organized religion could take to bring over their missionaries from the Philippines? Like, is there a like say missionary visa or something similar in Canada? I'm not giving ideas for MCBI, but I just wonder.
Yes, there is a category for religious workers, yes. However, in the current political climate that I mentioned, it's becoming more scrutinized. The government is looking at those applications much more carefully than they used to. So while it is theoretically possible for legitimate people to come over that way, uh, again, you need to document that carefully and make sure that you have all of the required information because all the immigration streams right now are being looked at much more carefully than they used to be. The education visa scheme, the temporary foreign workers, the religious, all of those. So again, while it's possible, again, it's more difficult than it used to be.
Right, thank you.
All right. So, final words from our co-hosts. I'm afraid we have to close. Yeah, go ahead. This chicken.
I just have this question for Consigliere. Based on your experience as a guest on this podcast, how would you respond to critics who claim that the hosts are stupid, biased, or act like bullies?
I guess the simple response would be that is not my experience at all. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time with the broccoli team. I think they're very they do good work. I'm very happy with what I know and with what I've seen. And anything to the contrary is something I guess I would disagree with quite strongly. Good question.
Thank you so much. Um, During family disputes, what's the most common mistakes of the of people when there's an issue with family?
The most common mistakes that I see, there's a few. One is that people think a divorce can be done very quickly. And like I told you, it will almost always take at least a year, and we're probably looking at some amount of time more than that. So I think a lot of clients are surprised when they find out I can't get a divorce today because I want one. The other thing that I have come run into is people think it will be very cheap. And litigation, I'm here to tell you, in the courts, is expensive. A full blown trial in Canada for a divorce will cost very likely well over $100,000 Canadian dollars.
Oh my God.
So that is not something to enter lightly, and sometimes people are surprised at how much it costs. Yeah, I think the time it takes and the cost are certainly things that a lot of people aren't aware of.
Mhm. Okay. So, what's your final advice to anyone navigating family issues, family law issues?
Final advice would be It's okay to take some time. This is a very difficult journey that anyone who has ever done it or thought about doing is going to experience. There will be a lot of emotions. There will be a lot of things that need to be considered, particularly if there are children, because you have to consider them and what they need. And when you separate and divorce, there's usually going to be different houses, different schedules with the kids, different vacations. All of this needs to be considered carefully. And my advice would be it's okay to take the time to do that, to think it over, to be sure that's what you want, and to be sure that anything you're asking for is in the best interest of the children, if there are children, and in the best interest of you yourself as well. I would also suggest, if it's possible, mediation can sometimes be an effective alternative to litigation. It can be quicker, it can be cheaper, and coming to a agreement that you decide yourselves with you and your spouse can sometimes be a more satisfying, more I guess in line with what you want than a court ordered decision, which is what will happen if you litigate. If you ask the court to decide the issues of property, of children, of pensions, anything else that there may be, the court will just decide. So sometimes, if it's possible, if you and your spouse are willing to, come to an agreement on your own, that is something that I think is advisable. And yeah, I think those are probably the highlights of what I would suggest. Take your time. The other thing, I guess, and this will sound a little self-serving, but a lot of people, a surprising amount of people, try to do this on their own. Whether they can't afford a lawyer or they think they don't know how to get a lawyer. This is not an easy process, and anyone, absolutely anyone, would benefit from professional advice on how to proceed, what's likely, what the court is likely to do, what's reasonable, sometimes dealing with the other side. So getting a lawyer as well is something that I would strongly encourage anyone to do. Yeah, I think that's generally it. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. Or
Sis and Sat, do you see any questions?
No, not at this moment. I think we have everything already, and I would like to thank our guest for tonight for joining us, and hopefully next time you'll join us again. Yun lang. Thank you.
Clancy, anything to add?
Oh, I have a question. Is it true that statistically most of the marriage that starts with the prenup are the most successful? I've heard that somewhere.
I am not aware of that statistic. It wouldn't necessarily surprise me. Sometimes couples who enter into a relationship uh, more with their eyes open, with a prenuptial agreement, or even sometimes I've heard an arranged marriage typically lasts longer too. Those types of things, there might be cultural or other reasons for those lasting longer. Um, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's true. Like I say, I'm just not aware of any statistic in Canada that would say that. But it definitely wouldn't surprise me if that's true.
Yeah, makes sense as well. So if they're open on discussing their, partnership and agreements, uh, uh, during the start, so, makes sense that they're more open to discussions, more mature, I would say. Makes sense. Thanks.
You guys have pro bono in Canada, right? Like,
Yes, there are a number of programs. There's one called Access Pro Bono, which gives free advice for a certain length of time for certain issues. Family is one of them. So if someone is struggling and they don't know where to turn, that is one good resource. Another resource, if you are low income, because lawyers are expensive, is legal aid. Every province has a legal aid program. The requirements will vary depending on the province that you're in. It's usually very low income, so your income has to be very low. But if you qualify, you will get a certain number of hours with a qualified lawyer to deal with your family or criminal or even immigration matter if you have an immigration matter that qualifies, or a certain number of hours. So that can be beneficial for people who otherwise wouldn't get a lawyer.
So there are requirements. But in your opinion, it's still better to pay for an attorney, correct?
Not necessarily. Something like legal aid will give you very high quality advice that would be comparable to what you might be able to find privately. The limitations of say legal aid versus something that you would do privately through a retainer agreement would be legal aid caps your hours. So they will cover you and your issue for a certain number of hours, but no more than that, unless you can get an extension. So very often what happens in reality is you will have a lawyer for a certain part of your say your divorce, but then the lawyer won't be able to act for you anymore. So you will have to either act for yourself at that point, or you will have to find a lawyer that you have to pay for. So I don't think, just to answer your question, I don't think it's a matter of one is better or worse than the other necessarily. I think both say legal aid or pro bono work have definitely good quality lawyers, but it's the time constraint. It's that limit of, we can do this amount of work and no more, that I think a lot of people run into.
Okay, that's great to hear. Here in the Philippines, it's better to pay for it. The chance of winning is higher. Anyway, thank you so much. It's nice to have you here, Consigliere. We had a great time. We really enjoyed this episode. Thank you, thank you. You're always welcome here. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. It was very good to be here. Very glad, and I appreciate everything you did and the platform that I could speak to people about family law. So thank you for that.
All right. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Consigliere. Shout out Kuya Del.
All right, guys. See you again next podcast. Have a good night. Bye.
Pa sa pagkukulang